Before we go down into family business and what kind of business we're talking about, let me start with this. Next. Next. It was a night of almost full moon. And in a metropolitan area of about 15 million people. Next. It was a Sunday night. You can feel all the hustling and bustling of a weekend night. People going about their weekend business. And yet, in the suburb of that big city, there was something happening. There was a nondescript warehouse. Nobody paid attention. Something is happening there. Because there was some treasure stored in that nondescript warehouse. Let me ask you, if you have something precious, where do you put it, usually? Some of us would put it under our pillow because we feel safe, it's close, I can reach it. In an earthquake, I can grab it and run with it. And some of us rent a safe from a bank and put all the stuff in the safe place. Well, in this case, the owner of the treasure chose to do the latter, which is put something precious, important, into something that they thought that nobody would pay attention to. And inside the warehouse, next, were many safes. This doesn't look like a bank vault. Many safes. And that particular night, some thieves broke into it. And they went after exactly some of those safes. They didn't open all the safes. They broke the locks on those specific safes, and they took some stuff out. And in fact, they took several hundred kilograms of stuff. That's about 1,000 pounds. Now, if they were doing a bank heist, can you guess how much money they would have stolen? Do you know how much $1 million of $100 bills would weigh? In movies, we usually see these scenes, right? When they do a transaction, cash transaction, you will see somebody bring a briefcase and they open it and say, you see all the green bills in there, right? I'm pretty sure that they have used $100 bills. That's the biggest face value of US dollars. And it turns out that $1 million weighs about 20 pounds. Most likely, it would not fit that small briefcase. So next time if you do a transaction like that, check. So this time, 1,000 pounds means they would have stolen $50 million. But this time, certainly, this is not a bank vault. It's not money that they stole. What did they steal? Next. Do you recognize these two countries? The green, somewhere in Middle East, at least that part you can tell, right? I tell you, the green part is Iran, and the red part is Israel. It's about 1,000 miles between these two countries, between these capitals. And the thieves that night did not only stole some stuff, but also they ran all the way from one place in Iran. Actually, in this case, the metropolitan area that we showed is Tehran, their capital. And the warehouse was in their suburb. So they stole the stuff with the Iranian security forces on their tail. They ran through the night back to Israel, all 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles is about from Seattle to LA. It takes about 18 hours of driving or 19 hours of driving if you go straight. They were escaping from that place. And the next day, next slide. This is the treasure that they stole. A cabinet of documents and some CD-ROMs. And this is the Israeli Prime Minister. He had a press conference on April 30th. The previous night, the stuff was stolen from Tehran, the warehouse. Next slide. And what the material showed was Iran has been building a nuclear bomb all along. So the material was the proof that they had all the details in their plan and their execution of building that nuclear bomb. Okay. So the thieves were from Mossad. Mossad is Israel's security agency. They have many great stories. One of those books, I don't recall exactly the name. If you lack summer reading, get that book. It's called Mossad something something. And I read that book in one breath, as we say in Chinese. I couldn't put it down. It's about this thick, filled with stories from the 50s when they pursued war criminals to the 70s and 80s, I believe. Many, many stories. I'm very sure this story will be on a movie screen someday. So Mossad stole 1,000 pounds of secrets from Iran from 1,000 miles away. What does it have to do with me? It's a good story. What does it have to do with me? Well, we'll come back to that. Next. So last week, Brother Kyle shared Mary's story. This week, we're continuing in the same family, Mary's family, which is Jesus' family. It's the same family, and if you look into their story, you will find that they were doing the same business. They were doing the same family business. They were doing the same God's business. Next. So let's continue to read from last week. I'll read. Now, when the days of her purification, that was after Mary's giving birth to Jesus, according to the law of Moses, 33 days, were completed, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male who opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. That means the firstborn of the mother shall be called holy to the Lord. And to offer a sacrifice according to what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Next. So here, we can pay attention to several details. One is according to the law of Moses. When I think about this, one day in the Jerusalem temple, a couple appeared with a baby. That day, actually, there were many other couples with a newborn baby. How can you tell, oh, this is Mary's family. They are special. This is Jesus, special. Certainly, there were Anna and the other prophet who recognized Jesus and gave blessing to Jesus. But when I read this passage again, we're so familiar with this passage, what impressed me was there must be so many other families. And they were doing the same thing. They were doing according to the law of Moses. Look at how many families we have today. Why are you here? You may think that, oh, just out of habit, I come to the church every Sunday, whole family. according to the Word of God. But even though, when we look at everyday things, when we look at a particular day, it may be very small. But when you look at the big picture, the accomplishment of Jesus was built day by day. Little things in the family, in his family, all the way to the cross. So this was one of those days. And shall be called holy to the Lord. Everybody is called. Everybody is called. Even though here it's talking about the firstborn son. Firstborn son in Bible actually means, son means the stronger, the victor. Firstborn in terms of his position, importance in God's eyes. I tell you, everybody here is a firstborn son in God's eyes. He has a plan for you. He has a plan for you. Not only for those really firstborn physically, but everybody. And turtle doves and young pigeons. In those days, in Moses' law, actually gave them a choice. If you have the means, you can offer a lamb for the burnt offering. So for the firstborn son, they need to offer two things. One is a lamb for burnt offering, another is a turtle dove or a young pigeon for sin offering. And the second choice is, if you don't have the means, you can choose not to offer the lamb, but offer either a turtle dove or a young pigeon. Because why? Because the birds are much cheaper. So as we can probably tell, Joseph and Mary's family was probably not that rich. Maybe they were poor, which is consistent with Nazareth. Now, if we look at Silicon Valley, we live in Silicon Valley. A lot of times I think, wow, we are so lucky we live in Silicon Valley. You know why? Not because the average income here is much higher than the rest of the nation. No. It's because I think the people here, we can all see through what the world can offer us very easily. We can see through what the world can offer us very easily. Why do I say so? A couple years ago, I heard a story. A reporter from Mercury News, the biggest newspaper around. Well, these days people don't read newspaper, so we probably don't know what Mercury News is. But Mercury News reporter went into Palo Alto High School, and she asked some students questions. So one of the students, she said, I'm a all-A student. I get all A's. But it doesn't mean that I can get into Stanford, because Stanford is that dream school, just across the street, right? It's so close. They can see it every day, but they may not be able to reach it. You see, she said, I may not get into Stanford. Then she said, even if I get into Stanford, I may not get all A's there. Even if I get all A's, I may not, when I graduate, I may not find the best job. Even if I find the best job, start the greatest startup in the world, I may not be as successful as Bill Gates. Then you can continue. You can continue her story. The gist of the story is, she has no direction. What should I do? I have seen it all. I can achieve everything that people think I should achieve. And in the end, even if I achieve everything, I will be successful as my parents, because they are the successful people. They live in Palo Alto. They have their mansion. Wherever they want to go, they can go. Whatever car they want to buy, they can buy. But that student thinks that I'm already living that life, and I'm not happy. So, the point here is, even if we're rich, even if we live a rich life, we may not be happy. On the other hand, we can see that when Jesus grew up, he grew up from a poor family. He's showing us here, if he can do that, we can do that. Next. So let's continue. So when they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own city, Nazareth. Here, the emphasis is their own city. I don't know where you are, but every one of us has our own place right now. The place for Jesus right then was Nazareth. So their family returned to Nazareth, a place of no name. Later people asked, what good things can come out of Nazareth? Maybe you think your life is very mundane right now, is of no importance right now, but you don't know. Maybe one day your ordinary life can lead to extraordinary accomplishment. We don't know. What's the difference? Let's continue. And the child grew and became strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. It's very interesting to see that what Bible emphasizes. First thing is strong in spirit. I think the wisdom and grace, they are also related, but strong in spirit. At work, I have interviewed over 300 people over the years. So I accumulated some experience. Silicon Valley has jobs, right? So that's why many college grads come to Silicon Valley to look for a job. So in the last couple of years, I have helped many young people to prepare for their interview to look for a job. And when I summarized my experience of interviewing other people, I thought of all the techniques, technical or not, communication, but in the end, you know what I think the most important thing is? Something to do with strong in spirit. I think the most important is SQ, spiritual quotient. Not IQ, not even EQ. Because what I have found was when I interview somebody, that somebody would give me a first impression. What I found I do is, after that first impression, what I usually do is I collect data points to support my first impression. Then I write my report. I prove that. There are not many cases where the first impression is overturned, because later on they perform very well. For example, the first impression was not good, but later on they performed very well, and I overturned my first impression. Now, where does the first impression come from? The harder that I think, the more I think it comes from our spirit, from inside. Now, how do you give somebody a first impression of confidence, of your ease with working with other people, your ease with taking other people's opinion, and your ease with communicating with other people, and taking different opinions, even criticism? How can you show that? It's from inside. It's from your spirit. So when Jesus grew up, the Bible says the most important is he grew up strong in the spirit. So a lot of people, parents, I'm very sure that you think many things are important for your children and all the children here. I'm sure that you think a lot of things are important to pursue. But I think the Bible tells us the most important thing to pursue is grow spiritually. Next. His parents went to Jerusalem every year at the Feast of Passover. Such a beautiful picture. His parents together, family together. Over the years, I think I've been in Silicon Valley for 26 years. So when I came here, I was about the business. What is the business? It's about startups. In the high time of the dot-com boom, it's from roughly 95 to 2001. Every restaurant you go into, there will be people talking about 3 things: startup, stock market, and buying a house. And every party you go to at the time, we were still single, so we still go to friends' parties and all that. And you hear people talk about 3 things. What are the 3 things? Startup, stock market, and house. These days, I don't know, because I'm out of that circle. I don't know what people talk about. I don't think they deviate from that too much. I was about business. But later on, as I became a believer, the Lord led me into another business. It's called the church business. But in the last couple of years, God allowed me to learn yet another business. What is it? Can you guess? Family business. It is as important as the so-called church business. They do things together, parents. I used to think that, shopping. If my wife can go shopping, I don't need to because that's a waste of time. We have 2 people. We can do 2 things at the same time. No. What I learned was it's so precious as a family to do things together. Even little things like going shopping. Great things happen in the small, in everyday things. Every year, they went to Jerusalem. So we may think that, I'm just, this Sunday is exactly the same as the last Sunday. We come to church. We do this. Every year. Every year we have retreats and New Year conference and all those. Some of us go to every one of those, right? Sometimes we think, I gained a lot. I grew a lot through this conference. Sometimes we think, it's like last time. I didn't gain much. But what we have seen from Jesus' family, they do this every time, every year. They do this every time. And great things was being built through those daily routines, annual routines, mundane family things. Next. And when he was 12 years old, he went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. So here, 12 years old. Some of us are 12, maybe a little below 12. Why 12? What's the significance of 12? In Jewish custom or tradition, they have, when a boy reaches 13, when a girl reaches 12, boy will have what they call a celebration of bar mitzvah. It means the boy has become a son of commandment. Now, from 13-year-old on, the boy or the young man can be responsible for his own actions, can take full responsibility of his own life, and is expected, for example, to endure a full day fast. So basically, in their eyes, from 13-year-old on, it is adulthood. It's really a son. And at that time, Jesus was only 12, so below that. Next. So let's pause a little bit here. Have you noticed that I have highlighted all the occurrences of Jesus in the past passages? Have you? Can we go back a little bit and review? I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. Okay. I have highlighted all occurrences of Jesus, except there's none. So when I think about this, when I prepare this, it's such a familiar passage. But I really thank God for speaking to me through this, that Jesus' name was not there. This could have been any family. They go to Jerusalem every year. They do according to what God tells them to do. If we didn't know the end, that Jesus went to the cross to accomplish our salvation, this could have been any family's journal, recording what they do every day. But I thank God that Jesus' family set an example for us as we go through these small things in our daily lives. In the end, great things were accomplished. Next. So in Hebrews, it says, therefore, in all things, he had to be made like his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God. In all things, Jesus was made like his brethren. It's everyday life. Very mundane. Everyday life. Next. Let's continue. When they had finished the days, as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem. Like I said, I highlighted, but that's the only occurrence. And Joseph and his mother did not know it, but supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. So when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem seeking him. So let's pay attention to this. This is very interesting that Jesus disappeared for quite a bit of time and his parents didn't realize that. Why is that? Well, one conclusion you can draw is, they were bad parents. Well, as I think about it, he said, the Bible says that they searched. They supposed him to be in the company. So they sought him among their relatives. What I find here is Jesus grew up in the company of many. He grew up in a big family, relatives. Just like what last week Brother Kyle told us, God did things through the family relationships. So they had a big family. So I'm pretty sure that Joseph and Mary felt it's safe to leave Jesus in the hands of their relatives because they have been living their life like that. Just like our kids, right? We go to other people's house so frequently, we stay over. We are very comfortable with leaving our kids in the hands of other parents. And all the young people, count yourself blessed, growing in a large family in the God's house. And to all people, when we grow, we need a community. We need a genuine community. What's a big family? What's so special about a family versus let's say, a small group? Small group may not be the best. But what's so unique about family? In a family, we are transparent. Our family members can see every aspect of us. There's no point wearing a mask. It doesn't work. We need a transparent, genuine community when we grow up so that we can be corrected. Next. Now, so it was that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. So when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." Okay. Here, "Son, why have you done this to us?" This is a very natural reaction of a mother. And it's very interesting that the Bible doesn't include any Joseph saying in here. And it says, "Your father and I have sought you anxiously." I'm guessing here, maybe Mary was the one who was more anxious. Maybe Joseph was the one who was quiet. Maybe in that family, Joseph was the one who was the introvert. And Mary was the one that was the extrovert. So she spoke first, right? She couldn't hold back like most extroverts. But interestingly, Mary said, "Your father and I." Even though this is a very small detail, she said, "Your father and I." She put his husband first. So all the sisters, reminder, you have a leader in the house. It's not you. It's your husband. And all the brothers, all the husbands, reminder, you are the leader of the house. Now take up your responsibility and lead. Next. And he said to them, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" That was Jesus' reaction. What's interesting here is this was the first recorded words of Jesus. And it was a question also. Do you remember what was the first question in the whole Bible? It's, "Where are you?" right? It's God looking for his son. And here is also a father looking for his son, except that in this time, the son, in this case, the father didn't understand. The son understood that he was about his father's business, well, Heavenly Father's business. So Jesus was surprised. He was surprised. Well, all the young people here, let me ask you, are there times when you think, "Oh, my parents don't understand. I'm so surprised that such an obvious thing they don't understand"? Is there such a thing? Well, let's look at what Jesus' reaction was. Even though he was obviously ahead of his parents. Well, it's in the next passage, but he said, "I'm about my Father's business." We'll come back to what my Father's business is. So a lot of time, family tension arises because when it's mine versus yours, there is tension. It's always like that. Next. So, but they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject to them. But his mother kept all things in her heart. They did not understand. All the young people look at what Jesus did. when your parents don't understand you. What Jesus did was he went with them and was subject to them. And even the Son of God, when he grew up, God put him under the authority of his parents. All the young people, think about that. Even Jesus was put under the authority of his parents, earthly parents, who didn't quite understand him. And then Mary kept all these things in her heart. What's important is, even when we don't understand things, we seek God's will. I'm pretty sure that Mary's understanding of Son of God, who his son grew over the years, until a time when Jesus started his ministry and went to Cana, to that wedding banquet, when people were having trouble with running out of wine. Mary said, "Listen to him. Do whatever he asks you to do." His understanding of God's will, understanding of the identity of his son, grew over the year. So it's very important for us to seek God's will and find out what God is doing when we have doubts, when we have questions. Next. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. I'm very sure that all the young people here, after some time, your parents will tell you, "Oh, you grow." And sometimes when you come to church, other uncles and aunties will say, "Oh, you grew." Even people coming back from college, we run into you and we say, "Oh, you grew." Well, when we say this, we usually mean you grew in your stature. That's your physical body. But Jesus grew not only outwardly in his physical body, but also in wisdom and in favor with God and man. And when I ponder this, I think God's word is really wonderful. The biggest test of our relationship with God, you know what it is? It says favor with God and man. If I say I have favor with God, how do I prove that? If you say you have favor with God, how do you prove that? You prove that by showing you have favor with man. Not man in general. Here is people, right? You prove by your favor with people around you. That's the biggest test. It's all about relationships. Are you growing? You must be growing in your relationships with the people around you. That's the biggest test. Next. Okay, so we have successfully gone through this passage. So what is the family business? A family business is father's business done through a family. In this particular case, what is father's business? Father's business was about salvation for all of us here, done through Jesus' family. It started from Mary, started from Joseph, continued through Jesus, continued through his life, all the way to the cross, until Jesus said, "It's done." It's Father's business done through a family. And that family, at that time, was looked upon as an ordinary family. Because when Jesus started to go out to start his ministry, all his relatives were saying, "What? Isn't this so-and-so, the son of Joseph, and so, we are so familiar with him. Why is he doing this?" because this family was regarded as so ordinary. But when they have been obedient to God's will, every step of the way, you can see that the greatest thing was accomplished through this family. Next. So why done through a family? Why done through a family? Well, first is the family relationship you cannot escape from. If you don't like a job, you can find another job. If you don't like a boss, you can find another boss. If you don't like a restaurant, you can go to the next door. If you don't like your family, is there any way to go? Anywhere to go? No. Congratulations. You have nowhere to go. You have to grow. And that this is God's plan and God's wisdom to put us in a family where we cannot escape to grow. In a family is actually the most difficult place to grow. Because why? Like I said, wearing a mask doesn't work. Because people can see through you. Every little thing. Because we are most relaxed at home, so our actions are very natural. All our actions are genuine first reactions. So what's inside us are naturally exposed to the rest of the family. Like I said, growth requires a genuine community where you cannot hide. And congratulations. And thank God for your family. Last night, I went to bed pretty early, earlier than my family, because I needed to get up early and go through my material again. But somehow, that was not the plan of the rest of my family. They were still going about doing their business and making all the noise. Now, I had two choices. I can use my authority to stop their business, or, well, I went with the second choice. I said to myself, congratulations. It's another time for your character to grow. This time, you can grow a little with patience. You can grow a little bit of perseverance. You can grow a little bit of endurance. So that's what I did. Next. So what is father's business? As we said, the father's business has many aspects. But one aspect we can see next is through the history of Israel, we can see that the father's business is about a people. He said, I want a people. I want to be their God, and they will be my people. And I want to build this nation. I want to build this kingdom. And this is, let's stay on the first one. This is the nation of Israel. This is the map of Israel in the time of Joshua. Do you see anything interesting on that map? Do you see where Jordan is? River Jordan? I can tell you that River Jordan runs from one lake to another. So the lake above is the Sea of Galilee, and this is Dead Sea. And Jordan River runs between these two bodies of water. Now, what's the significance of Jordan River? When Moses led the Israelites into Canaan, he led them across the river. Well, actually, Moses didn't. He was not able to go across the river Jordan to go into Canaan. Joshua led them across the river. So, the river is a border. Today, it's the national border between Jordan and Israel. At the time, it's between not Canaan and Canaan. Then what do you notice here? And some people are outside that. As you can see, Manasseh, that tribe, was pretty big. Well, at least their land was big. And half of the tribe was on the east side of Jordan River. And the other two tribes, Gad and Reuben, they were also east of the Jordan River. Now, what happened there? You can read all the details from Numbers 32, but I can summarize for you here. The two tribes, Gad and Reuben, when they stayed on the east side, they looked, wow, this is a great place. This has a lot of green pasture for grazing our cattle, our livestock, and a lot of space for us to build our houses, to raise our children. So those two tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh went to Moses and said, oh, we don't want to go across the river. You guys go. The rest of the Israelites, you go. Our inheritance is here. And then Moses scolded them, saying, when the rest of your brethren go across the river to conquer their land that God gives them, can you stay behind? And these three tribes, 2.5 tribes, they said, oh, we'll go with them. We will go to war with them. We'll fight with them until they conquer all the land that God gives them. Then we will come back to our land and build our houses, graze our cattle, and raise our children. And the interesting thing is, Moses allowed them. Moses said, yes, if you do this, go ahead. And chapter 32 ended there. When you read this, do you wonder what happened to them in the end? Do you want to know what happened to the 2.5 tribes, their land in the end? Next slide. This is today's Israel. Again, pay attention to the Jordan River. Where is Jordan? The river runs through Sea of Galilee to Dead Sea. The land that those 2.5 tribes dwelt on is not in today's Israel. Because why? Because they were outside God's will. And those people have lost all those lands. And Israel has never laid claim to that land. Israel always said, west of Jordan, that's our land. So I think it's important to choose God's will in everyday little things. When you make the decision, you may not see the light of the day until many, many years down the road next. And you will see the consequence. But it's a serious thing. I really encourage every one of us, every family, to seek God's will and follow God's will. Next. Oh, what happened to? Yeah, okay. Now the second aspect. Actually, it's still the. Let's continue on the nation of Israel. So Israel back then and Israel now. Previous. It's a continuing miracle and witness to the rest of the world that God of Israel is the true God. Why so? What happened recently in the past 100 years? 1917, there was something called Balfour Declaration. Mr. Balfour was the foreign secretary of the British Empire at the time, 1917. He sent a letter to the leader of the Jewish people at the time, said, "We are in favor of you, Jewish people, establishing a national home in the land of Palestine." At the time, there's no country named Israel. They didn't have this name yet. And they tell them that we are in favor of that. And it was a Jubilee year. In 1948, the nation of Israel was born, exactly 70 years ago, May 14. They made a declaration that the nation is born, and they immediately went into war. And there were many, many other wars after that. Not only did they survive, but they are also thriving. So one example that I can give is we all use PCs, right? And these days, Intel provides the best CPUs, whether it's in your desktop or in your laptop. But about 15 years ago, or maybe a little more than that, they hit a bottleneck. Back then, in their Pentium 4 family, they hit a bottleneck of energy, heat consumption. If they want to be very fast, their CPU was generating so much heat that it was impractical. And a small group in Haifa, in Israel, in Intel's lab in Haifa, Israel, started on a different path. They started another architecture based on the previous generation, Pentium 3, and they started to do a mobile chip. It's called Pentium M, and it's the starting point of all our Intel CPUs today. And that saved Intel. That was just one example of how the nation of Israel, even though very small, how significant it is. And in 1967, there was a 6-day war. The Arab countries from all sides tried to overtake Israel. Again, Israel did not only survive, but also they took back a lot of other land, including Jerusalem. At that time, the country became whole. And that was another Jubilee year. Do you think it's an coincidence? I don't think so. And fast forward to 2017. Last year, November time? November or December. What happened? President Trump announced that the USA is going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And this is continuing because the Jewish calendar is different from our calendar. Their New Year starts from about September. So we are still in this yet another Jubilee year. And what recently happened was the story that I told you in the beginning of this message, is the Tehran heist. That's contributing to the continuing security of the nation of Israel. As you can see throughout the history, and even recent history, we can see God's hand on this country because Israel was established as the witness to the rest of the world that their God is the true God. Next. And God said in Isaiah 46, "Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there's no other. I am God, and there's none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure." Next. Yet another aspect of the Father's business is what Paul says, the Israel of God. If you look into that, he was talking about the church. And Peter later on said, you also as living stones are being built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood. As you can see that God has been using different things to represent his work. A people, a nation, a city, a temple, a house. Here, temple, house, there a lot of times are interchangeable. Here it's a spiritual house built out of the living stones here. Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, that's Jesus, elect, precious, and he who believes on him will by no means be put to shame. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, as we can see. People, nation. This is what God is doing, building up his church. Next. And as part of building up this church, 1 Peter 2 continued, who once were not a people, but are now the people of God, who had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Certainly, we are the people who used not to be his people. Now we have obtained mercy. But here I want to particularly call out one people group, that are the Muslims. And if you read the news, you probably think that this world is completely out of order. Europe is dying because all the refugees. But as we learn from missionaries in the field, I can't stop but be amazed how God is using that situation to send a revival into the Muslims. And in Isaiah 19:23, God said, in that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. Assyria is today's Iraq. In that day, Israel will be one of the three with Egypt and Assyria. Well, translator of New King James Version also couldn't believe. So they translated it this way. But the literal translation is, in that day, is Israel third after Egypt and after Assyria or Iraq, that area. A blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, blessed is Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my inheritance. Bible repeats the same order here the second time. Egypt, Assyria, and Israel. So there was a pastor who were connected to the mission field in the Middle East. He told us this, and I really think it makes sense. He says, this is not the order of position, but this is the order of revival. God will have a revival in the Egyptians first, and the Assyrians, and then in Israel. He said, God will use their brethren, those descendants from Ishmael, that they always look down upon, to provoke the jealousy of the Jewish people to the belief of their own Messiah. That makes complete sense to me. So I'm really excited about Father's business around this. But this is not only happening in the field far from us in the Muslim countries, but there are many, many Muslims around here. And a couple of weeks ago, I met former Iranian brother. He used to be a Muslim. He was converted to Christian. He's a pastor now. Lives in the area. He converted in his college days. And he said, oh, there are so many of us around here. And when we are converted, we're so passionate for Jesus. And you can't believe how much work God can do through us, formerly Muslims. So, brothers and sisters, Father's business. As we go about our small businesses in our family, think about Father's business. And Father's business may be happening around us, maybe happening to the Muslims around us. And when we participate, when we devote ourselves into it, we'll see great things happen. Next. So, questions. Are you part of history? Is your family part of history? Next. Want to know the biggest enemy of Father's business? Who's the biggest enemy of Father's business? We usually say Satan. I tell you, Satan cries every night before God says, they are saying it's me again. It's not me. It's what? It's me. We are the biggest obstacle. When we live in our flesh, we are God's family. We are God's enemy. Next. So call to action. Let's learn from Joseph, Mary, and Jesus. Love our Father's business and devote our family to it. Now, how do we do that? Some of us have newborn child. Some of us are so busy with raising children, right? Maybe this is Father's business for you right now. But don't forget why we raise children. We raise them up as the chariots of the house of Israel, so that the Father's business can be done, so that Silicon Valley, a place so liberal, so against God, can be turned upside down. Maybe you're single. Maybe your current business is growing and preparing for your marriage. To get ready for a great family that will do great things when you obey His leading. And all the young children. Maybe you don't understand all the things said week after week in here. But God has a great plan for you. Just like when we talk about Bible figures, we cannot avoid talking about people here. Because every time we talk about Samuel, there are several Samuels here. Every time we talk about Jonah, there's at least one Jonah here. Every time we talk about Daniel, there are several Daniels here. Every time we talk about Caleb, there's at least one Caleb here. And there are Jonathan here. Why? Why did your parents give you these names? Because I think God did that. God gave the name in your parents' heart so that you can grow up to become a Samuel. Because why? Because Samuel in his day turned around the whole nation of Israel. After 20 years of prayer, the whole nation of Israel turned to God. Or maybe you are the Caleb of your day. Because God said, Caleb has a different heart. He had a different heart. He followed me. Or maybe you are the David of your day. Because God said, my servant David, he's the one after my heart. Let's pray.